"Laugh again," the man in black said from the top of the marble stairs, "and the next sound in this room will be your apology." The ballroom of the Moretti estate went silent so fast the crystal chandelier seemed to stop trembling above them. 100 guests in tuxedos and silk gowns stood frozen with champagne glasses halfway to their mouths, all because a plus-size maid in a plain black uniform had dropped to her knees beside a shattered tray of silver forks. Her name was Clara Bennett, 28 years old, a live-in maid working 14-hour shifts in a 10,000-square-foot mansion outside New York City, sending most of her paycheck to cover her mother's medical bills and swallowing every cruel comment with the same quiet breath. She was soft-faced, full-figured, tired around the eyes, and still kind enough to whisper sorry to the guests who had stepped on her fingers while pretending not to see her. The woman who had tripped her, Vanessa Hart, a razor-thin society model with a diamond necklace and a smile sharp enough to cut glass, laughed first. Then others joined in. "Careful, Clara," Vanessa said loudly. "The floor already has enough weight on it." A few men chuckled. Someone lifted a phone. Someone else muttered that people like Clara should stay in the kitchen where they belonged. Clara's cheeks burned, but she did not cry. She gathered the forks one by one, her hands shaking, because crying in front of rich people only made them feel powerful. She had learned that in hotel laundry rooms, catering kitchens, and every place where women like her were expected to be invisible unless something went wrong. Across the room, no one noticed the tall man stepping out of the private hallway with 2 guards behind him. Adrian Moretti, mafia boss of the Moretti family, was 36, wealthy beyond rumor, feared from Brooklyn docks to Las Vegas back rooms, and colder than the black suit fitted across his shoulders. Men lowered their voices when he entered. Enemies disappeared from negotiation tables without needing to be touched. Allies respected him because he never wasted words, never smiled for cameras, and never allowed betrayal to survive inside his house. But tonight his grey eyes were not on the senators, bankers, or crime captains waiting for his approval. They were on Clara. More than the broken tray, more than the laughter, he saw the way she moved her body between the spilled silverware and an elderly server, so the old woman would not be blamed. He saw how she pressed her bruised wrist against her apron to hide the pain. He saw dignity where the room saw weakness. "She ruined the presentation," Vanessa said, turning toward him with practiced sweetness. "I was only reminding her to be careful." Adrian descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing like a verdict. Clara did not know who he was at first, only that every cruel mouth around her had shut. The air changed when he came near her, heavy and electric, and when he stopped 2 feet away, she lowered her eyes because men like him were not supposed to look at women like her. He bent, picked up 1 silver fork from the floor, and placed it gently on the tray in her hands. The room forgot how to breathe. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice low enough that only she heard the softness inside it. "Clara Bennett, sir," she whispered. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Mr. Moretti. Really, she is just the maid." Adrian looked at Vanessa then, and the warmth vanished from his face. "No," he said, turning back to Clara, as if the entire ballroom had become background noise. Then he removed his black coat, placed it around Clara's trembling shoulders, and spoke loud enough for every phone, every guest, and every enemy in the mansion to hear. "She is not just the maid, she is my wife." For 3 full seconds nobody moved, and Clara Bennett stood in the center of the Moretti ballroom, wearing a mafia boss's coat like it had fallen from another life. Then the whispers exploded. "Wife? Adrian Moretti had a wife?" Vanessa Hart's perfect smile cracked so badly even the guests behind her noticed. Clara's fingers tightened around the silver tray, her heart pounding so hard she almost missed the way Adrian stepped closer, not touching her, not trapping her. Only standing beside her like a wall, the whole room suddenly feared. "Mr. Moretti," Clara whispered, barely moving her lips, "I think there has been a mistake." His grey eyes lowered to hers, calm and unreadable. "The mistake," he said softly, "was letting them think they could humiliate you in my house." Across the ballroom, a senator cleared his throat, a banker tucked away his phone, and one of Adrian's men quietly blocked the main doors. The Moretti estate, only minutes ago full of laughter and glittering cruelty, now felt like a courtroom where Adrian was both judge and storm. Vanessa tried to recover first. She stepped forward, diamonds flashing at her throat. "Adrian, this is ridiculous. You do not have to defend a servant just because she embarrassed herself." Adrian did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Her name is Clara." Vanessa froze. "Use it." The correction landed harder than a slap. Clara looked down because no one important had ever protected her name before. Not her old hotel manager who called her sweetheart when he underpaid her. Not the wealthy women who snapped their fingers instead of speaking to her. Not the ex who told her she should be grateful anyone looked at her at all. But Adrian Moretti, the most feared man in the room, had noticed. He took the silver tray from Clara's trembling hands and handed it to one of his guards. "Find out who tripped her," he ordered. The guard nodded. Vanessa laughed once, too sharp. "Are you seriously investigating a spilled tray?" Adrian turned his head. "I investigate disrespect. It spreads if you let it." A chill moved through the guests. Then an older woman near the piano gasped and pointed at the floor. Clara followed her gaze and saw a thin gold pin lying beside the broken glass, its tip bent, its pearl head matching the ones in Vanessa's clutch. Clara's stomach dropped. It had not been an accident. Vanessa had used it to snag the hem of Clara's uniform when she walked past. Adrian saw the pin. Then he saw Clara's wrist again, the faint bruise half hidden beneath his coat sleeve. His jaw tightened. "Who touched you?" he asked. Clara's breath caught. "No one. It is nothing." "Clara." Her name sounded different in his voice, not like an order, but like a place she could rest. She looked up despite herself. "A man came to the service entrance this morning. He said if I did not leave this job by tonight, my mother's bills would become my problem in a much worse way." The room went still again, but this time the silence had teeth. Adrian's eyes sharpened. "What man?" Before Clara could answer, a young boy appeared at the top of the stairs in blue pajamas, clutching the railing with one small hand. Adrian's entire face changed for half a second, so quickly most people missed it. Clara did not. She saw fear. The boy looked at the crowd, then at Clara in Adrian's coat, and his eyes filled with sudden relief. "You came back," he said to her. Clara went pale. Adrian looked from the child to Clara, his controlled mask cracking at the edges. "Luca?" he said carefully. "You know her?" The little boy nodded. "She helped me when the bad man followed me near school." Every guest stared. Vanessa took one step backward. Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her. She had helped a lost child 3 weeks ago outside a Brooklyn pharmacy, hiding him behind her body until a black SUV arrived, but she never knew his name. She never knew he was Adrian Moretti's son. Adrian turned fully toward Clara now, and for the first time the most dangerous man in New York looked shaken. Then his phone buzzed. He read the message, and the softness disappeared from his eyes. On the screen was a photo of Clara leaving the pharmacy with Luca's hand in hers, followed by one sentence: "Send the maid outside alone, or your son does not survive midnight." Adrian Moretti did not panic, but everyone in the ballroom saw the exact moment the temperature around him dropped. He closed his hand around the phone, looked at Clara Bennett standing in his coat, then lifted his eyes to the balcony, where little Luca still clutched the railing in his pajamas. "Take my son to the East Wing," he said. 2 guards moved at once, but Luca shook his head, frightened. "No, I want Clara." The words hit the room harder than Adrian's announcement that she was his wife. Clara's face softened despite her fear, and she took one step toward the stairs before stopping herself, as if remembering she was only a maid in a borrowed coat and a dangerous lie. Adrian noticed the hesitation. "Go to him," he said quietly. "No one in this house will stop you." Clara climbed the marble stairs with every guest watching the sway of his coat around her shoulders, and for once no one dared laugh. Luca reached for her hand the second she came close. His small fingers wrapped around hers like he had known her all his life. Adrian watched from below, his expression controlled, but his eyes betrayed him. Clara had protected his son before she knew his name, before she knew his father was a man people crossed the street to avoid. That kind of courage could not be bought, threatened, or faked. Then Vanessa Hart stepped into the center of the ballroom, anger glittering beneath her beauty. "This is touching," she said, voice shaking with humiliation, But are we all supposed to ignore the obvious? A maid appears near your son, gets herself invited into your home, causes a scene, and suddenly a threat arrives. Maybe she is not innocent. The accusation spread like smoke. Clara froze at the top of the stairs. Luca squeezed her hand. Adrian turned slowly. Choose your next words carefully. Vanessa lifted her chin. I already have. Check her locker. Check her phone. Check whatever cheap apartment she came from. Women like her do not end up beside men like you unless they are planted there. Clara's throat tightened, not because Vanessa called her poor, but because some part of the room wanted to believe it. She had seen that look before, the quick little relief people felt when cruelty came with an excuse. Adrian signalled one guard with 2 fingers. Search the staff quarters. Now. Clara's eyes widened. Mr. Moretti, I have nothing to hide. I know, he said, not looking away from Vanessa. That is why whoever framed you should be afraid. 10 minutes later, the guard returned carrying Clara's black work bag. Inside was an envelope she had never seen, packed with cash, a burner phone, and a photo of Luca outside his school. Gasps tore through the ballroom. Clara went white. That is not mine. Vanessa gave a soft, satisfied laugh. Of course it is not. Adrian walked to the bag, picked up the burner phone and turned it in his hand. His face revealed nothing, but Clara saw the smallest tightening at his mouth. Someone had placed the trap perfectly. Someone knew the staff layout, the security blind spots, and Clara's schedule. This was not random. This was inside his house. His underboss, Marco Bellini, stepped forward from near the bar, broad-shouldered and stone-faced. Boss, we have to treat her as a threat until proven otherwise. Clara looked at Marco and suddenly remembered the man at the service entrance that morning, the one who had grabbed her wrist and told her to leave before midnight. He had worn a cap pulled low, but the voice was the same. Her breath broke. It was him. Every head turned. Marco's expression did not change. She is scared and lying. Clara stepped down one stair, still holding Luca behind her. You threatened me this morning. You told me my mother's bills would become my punishment if I stayed. Marco smiled for the first time, cold and small. Prove it. Adrian's hand moved to the inside of his jacket, not to draw anything, only enough to make every guard in the room straighten. I said no one touches her. But before he could speak again, the chandeliers flickered. The ballroom screens, set up earlier for Adrian's Alliance presentation, flashed to life by themselves. A video appeared showing Clara in the service hallway, placing something into her own bag. The crowd erupted. Clara stared in horror, because the woman on the screen had her uniform, her body shape, her hair pinned the same way. But Adrian stepped closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing. Then he saw the one detail everyone else missed. The woman in the video was wearing Vanessa's pearl bracelet. Adrian Moretti raised one hand, and the ballroom fell into a silence so sharp Clara could hear Luca breathing behind her. On the giant screen, the fake Clara moved through the service hallway, sliding the envelope into the black work bag with practiced care, but Adrian's eyes were locked on the wrist. The pearl bracelet caught the light for half a second. Vanessa's bracelet. The same bracelet now missing from her arm. Clara turned toward her, and for the first time all night, Vanessa looked less like a queen and more like a cornered thief. That is not proof, Vanessa snapped. Lots of women wear pearls. Adrian took one slow step toward her. Not in my house. Marco Bellini moved before anyone expected it. He grabbed Clara's arm and yanked her down the last stair, using the shock of the crowd as cover. Luca cried out, but Clara twisted her body so the boy stayed behind her, safe against the railing. Pain flashed through her bruised wrist, yet she did not scream. She planted her feet, full-figured and shaking but unbroken. Let go of me, she said. Marco leaned close enough for only her to hear. You should have left when I warned you. Then Adrian was there. He did not shout. He did not rush. He simply placed one hand over Marco's wrist and squeezed until Marco's face drained of colour. You touched my wife, Adrian said, each word quiet enough to terrify the men who knew him. In front of my son. Marco released her. Clara stumbled, and Adrian caught her by the elbow with surprising gentleness, steadying her before stepping between her and the room. The gesture was small, but it changed everything. He did not hide her behind him like she was weak. He stood beside her like she mattered. Vanessa laughed too loudly, desperate now. Stop calling her that. Everyone knows this is fake. You were supposed to announce our engagement tonight. My father's banks were going to secure your West Coast shipments. You need my family." A ripple moved through the guests. Clara looked up at Adrian, finally understanding why the mansion was full of politicians, bankers, and criminals in designer suits. This party was not a celebration. It was a transaction. Vanessa was not only a jealous model, she was the daughter of the man financing half of Adrian's empire. Adrian's face did not change, but Clara saw the old wound behind his eyes, the kind carried by a man who had learned that every hand offered to him came with a chain. "Then let the banks burn," he said. Vanessa went pale. Marco's voice cut through the room. "Boss, think carefully. Choose the Maid, and we lose the alliance by midnight." Adrian looked at Clara. She was trembling under his coat, humiliated in front of people who had already decided she was guilty, yet her hand was still reaching back to make sure Luca stayed behind her. That was when his expression shifted from cold control to something dangerously tender. "Clara," he said, "tell me what happened outside that pharmacy." Her lips parted. "I saw Luca being followed. A man in a delivery jacket kept circling the block. Luca looked scared, so I pretended he was my nephew and took him inside. I called the number on his backpack tag. I waited until the black SUV came." Adrian's eyes darkened. The number on that tag was not public. Marco flinched. It was small, but Adrian saw it. Clara did too. "The man had a tattoo," she whispered, "a black bell on his wrist." Every Moretti guard turned toward Marco Bellini. Bellini meant little bells in Italian. The traitor had put his own mark on the man sent after Adrian's son. Marco smiled slowly, dropping the mask at last. "She is smarter than she looks." Clara lifted her chin, hurt flickering across her face, but not defeating her. Adrian's hand moved, not to strike, but to pull his coat tighter around her shoulders. "She has always been smarter than this room." Vanessa suddenly grabbed a champagne glass and hurled it toward Clara, but Clara moved first, pulling Luca down and shielding him with her body as glass shattered against the stair rail. The ballroom erupted. In the chaos, the lights cut out completely. A single emergency lamp turned everything blood red. Adrian reached for Clara's hand, but she was no longer beside him. His coat lay on the marble floor. His phone buzzed again. This time the message showed Clara being dragged through the service corridor by two masked men, followed by one sentence that made Adrian Moretti's face turn deadly still. "Sign the alliance before midnight, or your wife disappears forever." Adrian Moretti looked at the message once, then handed the phone to his head of security with a calm so dangerous the nearest guests stepped back. "Seal every gate. Shut down every camera feed except internal backup. No one leaves my house." Vanessa's father, Richard Hart, pushed through the crowd in a tuxedo worth more than Clara's yearly salary, his face red with anger. "You will do no such thing. My daughter has been insulted enough. The alliance papers are waiting in your study, Adrian. Sign them before midnight, or every bank from Manhattan to Los Angeles closes its door to you." Adrian turned toward him, eyes empty of fear. "Then I will buy new doors." In the red emergency light, the ballroom looked less like a mansion party and more like a battlefield dressed in crystal. Luca was safe now in the arms of Adrian's elderly housekeeper near the east wing, but his small voice carried down the stairs. "Find Clara." Adrian's jaw tightened. That was all it took. He moved. Down the service corridor, past the kitchen, past the laundry room, every step fast and silent, following the path only staff used and powerful men ignored. That was why Clara mattered. She knew the invisible parts of the house. She knew where doors stuck, where cameras blinked, where servants whispered, and somewhere beneath the mansion, Clara Bennett was proving she was not the helpless woman they wanted her to be. The two masked men had dragged her into the old wine storage room below the garage, zip-tying her wrists to a metal chair beside stacked crates and a humming refrigerator. One of them kept checking the time. 11:37 p.m. 23 minutes until midnight. Marco Bellini stood in front of her, no mask now, his black bell tattoo showing beneath his cuff. Vanessa paced beside him, one pearl bracelet missing, her face twisted with panic. This was supposed to be simple, she hissed. Make her look guilty, scare her away, then Adrian signs. Clara lifted her head, breathing hard, hair loose around her face. You tripped me in front of everyone because you were scared of a maid. Vanessa's eyes flashed. I was scared of what he saw when he looked at you. The words hit Clara in a place deeper than the ropes. For years, people had acted like her body made her easy to dismiss. Too big to be chosen. Too ordinary to be loved. Too soft to be dangerous. But Vanessa had seen what the room refused to admit. Adrian had not pitied Clara. He had respected her. Marco leaned close. When Adrian signs the Heart Alliance, you disappear. When Luca asks questions, we say you ran because you were guilty. Clara looked down at the burner phone Marco had thrown onto the crate beside her, the same one planted in her bag. Its screen was cracked, but still glowing. Her wrists burned as she twisted them slowly, quietly, against the edge of the metal chair. In the ballroom above, Richard Hart slammed the contract onto a table. "Midnight, Moretti. Choose your empire, or choose that woman." Adrian entered the ballroom again, but not alone. His guards pulled up the backup security feed on every screen. Vanessa smiled, thinking he had surrendered, until Clara's voice filled the room from the hidden audio connected to the burner phone. "You tripped me in front of everyone because you were scared of a maid?" Then Vanessa's answer played clearly. "I was scared of what he saw when he looked at you." The room erupted. Richard Hart went pale. Adrian looked at the screen, and for the first time that night, pride softened the fury in his eyes. Clara had not waited to be saved. She had saved the truth herself. Below the mansion, Clara snapped the loosened tie from one wrist, grabbed a heavy metal serving tray from the crate beside her, and struck the emergency fire switch with all her strength. Alarms screamed. Sprinklers burst to life. The locked wine room door clicked open. Marco cursed and lunged, but Clara shoved the crate into his path and ran into the service tunnel, soaking wet, barefoot, terrified, but moving. Adrian reached the lower garage seconds later as she stumbled from the corridor. For one breath, they saw each other across 30 feet of concrete and flashing lights. Then Marco appeared behind her, one arm around her shoulders, a weapon raised toward Adrian. Clara did not faint. She did not beg. She drove her heel into Marco's foot, threw her full weight sideways and broke free just as Adrian's men swarmed in. But Marco had one last move. He grabbed a remote from his jacket and smiled through the rain from the sprinklers. "You are still too late. Luca's car is wired to leave this estate in flames." Adrian's face went still. Clara's blood turned cold. Then Luca's small voice came through Adrian's radio from the east garage. "Dad, why is there a red light blinking under the car?" Adrian Moretti did not waste one breath on fear, because fear belonged to men who still had time to choose themselves. He had only seconds, a crying son near the east garage, a terrified housekeeper trapped by a locked security system, and Clara Bennett standing beside him, soaked, barefoot, bruised, but still looking at the mansion like she could find a way through the darkness no one else could see. "Dad?" Luca's voice shook through the radio. "The red light is still blinking." Adrian's hand tightened around the receiver. "Do not touch anything. Look at Mrs. Donnelly and walk exactly where she tells you." Then Clara grabbed his sleeve. "Not hard, not desperate, but certain. The laundry chute corridor connects to the east garage wall," she said, breath coming fast. "There is a staff door behind the rolling carts. It jams from the outside, but opens if someone lifts the latch from inside." Adrian looked at her, and for the first time that night, he did not question, test, or command. He trusted. "Show me." They ran together through the service tunnel, past dripping pipes and red emergency lights, past walls decorated for people who never knew the staff paths existed. Clara moved ahead, one hand against the wall for balance, his black coat dragging behind her like a battle flag. Every step hurt her wrist, every breath burned her chest, but she did not slow down. Adrian's guards followed, armed with radios and flashlights, but it was Clara who knew which corner flooded, which stair was loose, which utility door had never been properly repaired because no rich guest would ever have to use it. When they reached the narrow staff passage behind the east garage, Luca was visible through a small wire glass window, crying in Mrs. Donnelly's arms near the black SUV. Beneath the vehicle, the red light blinked like a cruel little heartbeat. Adrian's face went white in a way Clara had not thought possible for a man the whole city feared. He raised his hand to the glass, and Luca pressed his tiny palm against the other side. For a second, the Mafia boss vanished and only her father remained. "Open it," Adrian ordered. One guard shoved his shoulder against the door. It did not move. Clara pushed past him. Not like that. She dropped to her knees, reached under the rusted lower panel, and felt for the old latch with shaking fingers. Vanessa had mocked those hands. Guests had stepped on them. Marco had bruised them. But those same hands found the latch no powerful man knew existed. The door cracked open. Adrian pulled it wide, and Mrs. Donnelly hurried through with Luca in her arms. Luca immediately reached for Clara. "You came back," he sobbed. Clara gathered him close, holding him with the tenderness of a woman who had been treated like she was too much, yet still made room for everyone else. "I promised you were safe," she whispered, "and I meant it." Adrian looked at them, rain from the sprinkler system running down his face, his eyes full of something deeper than gratitude. Then Marco Bellini stumbled into the garage from the far stairwell, drenched, furious, and cornered. His men were gone. His plan was collapsing. All he had left was the remote in his hand and the ugly belief that power meant making innocent people afraid. "Move away from the boy," Marco shouted. Clara turned her body in front of Luca without thinking. Adrian stepped in front of Clara just as naturally, 3 lives lined up in one silent promise. Luca behind Clara, Clara behind Adrian. Adrian facing the traitor he had once called family. "It is over, Marco," Adrian said. "No," Marco hissed. "It is over when you lose something the way I lost everything under your father." Adrian's expression darkened, but his voice stayed controlled. "My father's sins do not give you the right to threaten my son or frame an innocent woman." Marco lifted the remote. Clara saw Adrian's guards freeze, not because they lacked courage, but because one wrong move could turn the garage into tragedy. Clara's eyes moved across the floor, past the puddles, past the scattered laundry carts, past the reflection of the blinking red light beneath the SUV. She saw the breaker panel on the wall, the one the maintenance men complained about during staff lunch. "Adrian," she whispered, "the garage circuit is separated from the house alarm." He understood before anyone else did. One guard moved to shield Luca. Another opened the emergency exit wider. Clara pulled Luca back into Mrs. Donnelly's arms and shoved them toward the corridor. Marco's attention snapped toward her, furious that the woman he dismissed kept ruining him. That single second was enough. Adrian crossed the distance and knocked the remote away before Marco could use it. The device skidded across the wet concrete, stopped beneath a cart, and Adrian's security team swarmed in, pinning Marco down while a trained bomb squad unit, already called by Adrian's men, rushed the garage and secured the threat without anyone being harmed. No explosion came. No child was lost. No woman disappeared. Only Marco's power ended, face down on the concrete, while Clara stood shaking in the doorway with Luca wrapped around her waist. Upstairs, the ballroom guests were herded back beneath the glittering chandelier, but the laughter was gone. Vanessa Hart stood near her father, pale and trembling, one pearl bracelet still on her wrist and the other displayed on the screen beside the fake hallway footage. The backup audio played next, Clara's brave recording exposing every word Vanessa and Marco had said in the wine room. The planted cash, the burner phone, the threat messages, the forged video, and Marco's confession appeared one by one until the people who had mocked Clara could not hide behind wealth, beauty, or silence. Richard Hart demanded a private conversation. Adrian gave him the public truth instead. "Your alliance is finished," he said. "Your daughter attacked a woman under my roof, helped endanger my son, and mistook cruelty for strength." Vanessa's eyes filled with humiliated tears. "She was just supposed to leave," she whispered. "She was never supposed to matter." Clara flinched, but Adrian turned to her and offered his hand in front of everyone. Not pulling, not claiming, offering. Clara looked at his hand, then at the room that had once made her feel small. Slowly she placed her fingers in his. Adrian led her to the center of the ballroom, the exact place where she had been on her knees gathering broken silverware less than 2 hours earlier. Then he lowered himself to one knee. The room gasped, but Clara only stared at him, overwhelmed. "I called you my wife to protect you," Adrian said, his voice low but clear. "But tonight you protected my son, my home, and the truth. You were loyal when no one rewarded you, Brave when everyone doubted you, gentle when the world gave you every reason to become cruel. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. This time she did not wipe them away in shame. Adrian held her hand with both of his. You do not have to shrink, change, or become easier for anyone to love. Clara Bennett, you were worthy before I ever saw you. I only ask for the chance to prove it every day, if you choose me freely. Luca ran to her then, wrapping both arms around her waist. Choose us, he whispered. Clara laughed through her tears, and the sound broke something cold in the mansion. I choose safety, she said. I choose respect. I choose a home where no one has to beg to matter. Her eyes met Adrian's. And I choose you. Months later, the Moretti estate no longer felt like a museum of power and loneliness. Clara's mother received the care she needed. Luca had bedtime stories, warm pancakes, and the woman who had once saved him outside a Brooklyn pharmacy. Adrian still ruled a dangerous world, but inside his home, his voice softened when Clara entered the room. She did not become loved because she changed her body. She became safe enough to see what had always been true. She was never hard to love, only surrounded by people too small to value her. And the mafia boss who trusted no one learned that the strongest empire was not built on fear, but on the people worth protecting. So if you were Clara, after being mocked by everyone in that ballroom, would you have trusted the man who called you his wife? Subscribe for more emotional mafia boss stories where the woman they underestimate becomes the one they can never forget.